This is BGVP's DM8, priced at $350 US, which I assume they're going straight against the Blessing 2s, because the Blessing 2s are priced at around that age range. Not age, range. Now, one thing I must say is that they look absolutely gorgeous. Like, when I first saw pictures of the BGVP DM8's wooden shell, I just knew I had to look at them in person, and good thing that I got the chance to. And yeah, this review was only possible because Audience Store, their owner, lent this unit to Brian for a demo, and Brian lent these to me, and now we have this review. We're not affiliated to any stores or any brands whatsoever. We're not getting anything from Audience Store for doing this review. So yeah, this review is just completely of my own opinion, and let's just get started, I guess. The BGVP DM8's build quality, but just start off with build quality first. The build quality of the BGVP DM8 I think is quite excellent. The shells are absolutely gorgeous. They do have a visible seam here. You can see where the faceplate is connected towards the rest of the shell. There's like this black seam here, but overall, as an overall package, I think they look quite gorgeous. They have a vent at the back, which is quite surprising because they are an 8BA configuration. I suppose they have vented BAs. I'm guessing that's probably for the base drivers, possibly. Not sure of that. The nozzles of the BGVP DM8s are quite large. Although they are a pseudo custom IEM shaped, they don't really go in that deeply into your ear canal, but they have a very large nozzle. So if you have very small ear canals, you might have problems with them. I don't really have issues with big nozzles most of the time, and my ears generally don't have issues with fitting of most IEMs that I've tried so far. In terms of the cable, it's an 8 braid thick cable. It's extremely thick. It's quite heavy also. It dangles quite a bit. It's a little bit microphonic. It doesn't have a lot of memory to the cable, so there's not a lot of problems with. I mean, I don't have lots of problems with it. It's just that it's extremely heavy and a bit uncomfortable to use whenever you move around anywhere. When you're sitting down, it's fine, but yeah. The chin slider also doesn't really work that well. The chin slider just wobbles around quite a bit. I guess that's because of the braid. It doesn't really stay in place sometimes, so that's a bit of an issue. But overall, as a package, I think they look absolutely gorgeous. Some people don't like the combination between the stabilized wood shell and the brown copper-ish cable, but I like it. I think they look pretty neat. I think they look very nice together. So yeah. And normally I would complain about 2.5mm balanced jacks or straight jacks in general, but there's a reason why they provided this as standard, and we'll just get to that once we go through the packaging. So the packaging we'll just go through quite quickly. The front cover, absolutely gorgeous. I think it looks pretty nice. You can put it on display and it won't really look out of place. They have this sort of sheet. You get an envelope. It has all sort of documentation, user guides whatsoever in there, both in Mandarin and in English. You get 10 pairs of ear tips with this one, so you get in total 11 pairs of ear tips, a pair of foam ear tips, 3 pairs of focal ear tips in 3 sizes, 3 pairs of balanced and base ear tips. They alter the sound signature ever so slightly, but I'm not able to confirm whether or not that's just me being biased because I read the labels already and I already know what the ear tips look like, so I can't really do an ABX test and not be biased at all. So yeah, that's rather unfortunate. But I think more importantly is a good seal in your IEM. A good consistent seal, I think, is critical when you want to just try out ear tips. So yeah, and the sound difference that I did perceive with my very biased opinion, because I already know what the titles of those ear tips are, is that they're just changing the sound like ever so slightly, not by much, like ever so slightly. It doesn't really, it won't make you love or hate these IEMs if you already have an opinion of them. Now, the earphone cable, this cable, which comes with a 2.5mm straight jack. The reason why they provided that, which is because they also give you these two adapters. They're not particularly designed for this cable. Like if you plug it in, you'll see that there's a gap. They definitely did not design this cable around using adapters. They probably found some adapters and just included them, but rather than having to purchase them separately, knowing that they're inside the box, I think that's pretty neat. You'll be able to use them with your just normal regular 3.5 and 4.4 jacks. That's pretty neat. So I like that they included that. Probably added to the price, I suppose. Pretty sure it does, but at least it's included, so you don't have to buy it again. And the last thing that you get also is this, what's it called, nozzle cleaner. And yeah, that's pretty much all you get in the packaging of the DM8s. By the way, the box itself is like it's made out of some sort of like, I think it's aluminium. I don't know. It's quite a bit thinner than the normal cases that I get with that are this shape and function this way also. Like if you know the Adventure Electronics case that you get, that feels a lot thicker than these do. These feel a bit hollow, but they're a matte finish, and I think overall they just look quite sleek. So I'm not gonna complain that much. Now, let's just get into sound of the DM8s, which is probably what you came here for. Overall, I think the sound of the BGVP DM8s is quite surprising. They're going for a more warm signature, which I did not expect from a Chi-Fi company. I mean, normally the first thing that you associate with Chi-Fi is a V-shaped sound signature, but the BGVP DM8s are definitely warm. They have a little bit of tingle in the treble. Brian was not able to perceive this, but I'm a bit more sensitive towards treble than he is, and I usually complain a lot in terms of treble. So yeah. Now we'll just get into more detail about that, and we'll just start off with bass. So the bass of the DM8s are definitely emphasized, and although they are a BAIM, I think the sub bass rumble is quite okay. It's not the best sub bass rumble I've heard for a BA implementation, but I think these will pass. I think they do quite well, and the mid bass kick and punch and quantity is also elevated, and I think the kick and punch is quite good for a BA. I'm surprised that they were able to implement this quite well. I mean, it's BGVP. It's more miss than hit most of the time when it comes to BGVP, but I think this is one of the hits. Aside from that, the bass does bleed a little bit to the mid range, ever so slightly, not by much. But the bass speed overall, I think, it's more on a medium side. The decay is a bit less than what I would expect normally. Like I would want a bit more decay in the bass to just make it feel more like a dynamic driver, I suppose. And I think to me that feels like a more natural presentation. But on the flip side, that means that the bass of the DM8s, they don't really fall behind that easily. They still can't do Dragon Force and very fast bass sound, but I think it's fine. I think if you're a bass head, these will not satisfy you, but if you just like an elevated bass quantity, if you like a more warm signature, I think these will do you quite well. Now in the mid-range also follows suit. It's quite warm, it's quite thick. There's just not a lot of this thing I can say about the mid-range. Separation is alright. Detail retrieval is also okay. I wouldn't say it's the best in class. I would say it's quite average. Male vocals sound thick. Female vocals are not that forward, which is quite surprising. They're definitely present, but normally with Chi-Fi, they're usually very forward, and especially recently with most of the Moondrop and all other Chi-Fi IMs that I've heard, lots of them have very emphasized upper mids. These don't. Female vocals definitely don't sound thin, and they are a bit more on the softer side of things. They don't really how to say this, they don't really go and attack you in terms of when you listen to violins and such, which is kind of nice because these make it for like a more relaxed listening session, which I can appreciate. I'm not gonna put it against them. So if you like a more softer tuning, like a more warm softer tuning, the mid-range I think will suit you quite well here. Treble region, as I mentioned earlier, there's this sort of like slight raise. There's this peak in the treble which I'm not able to identify where exactly it's coming from, which sometimes occasionally annoys me, which what led me to thinking that these were more of a slight V-shape IEM originally, but I think they classify more as more just a general warm signature. I think there's just something in the treble that just annoys me a little bit. I'm a little bit like fuzzy about the treble. So yeah, you might not perceive this, but I perceive treble quite a bit more than most people do normally. So the treble region is not, I think they're quite good. Like, I wouldn't say that these are bad. I think the speed is quite sufficient. There's definitely not the fastest treble in the world. They're more on the softer side of things. They're not very aggressive. Sibilants, etc., I think are a bit more suppressed. Compression feels smoothed over. Like, I was not able to perceive much compression in the DM8s like I would normally on other IEMs, such as like the Blessing 2s. Might be a good thing, might be a bad thing. I would say that if you consume a lot of YouTube content or like not a very high hi-fi content, I think that will do you well. But I don't know, that's just, I guess that's preference. Extension though is, I wouldn't say it's the best in terms of extension, which is quite surprising. So the extension, although they claim to have this Sonian, was it Sonian or was it Knowles? Either one of those, they said that they had a super tweeter inside of these, but the extension right before my hearing stops, which my hearing stops at around like 17k, starting around like 15-16k, they start to roll off already, which is, I mean, not a lot of songs have that much information in them. But I was expecting like more extension, considering that they have or claim to have this super tweeter in them. So yeah, detail separation in the treble also I think is quite good. Not gonna complain a lot in the treble, but yeah, overall it's more of a warm, softer sound. If you like that, if you like something like the E2000, E3000s, I think you'll like these. Or if you like something like the Legacy 3s, I think these will suit you quite well. Which, by the way, we're just gonna talk about the comparisons. Now, comparing these to the Blessing 2s. Oh, geez, I actually forgot to talk about the soundstage of these, which is my biggest complaint, and why I'm not able to really appreciate them at the price that they are at. The soundstage of these are not impressive. Like, I don't really perceive soundstage that well most of the time, and this might just be a problem with my ears. But if this were my head, right? If this were my head, the BGVP DM8s, they just don't have a lot of depth. They just feel very inwards in terms of depth. They do have quite a lot of width. I think the width is just about nearly like just a little bit inside of my head. But the depth is there's very little depth to them. And it kind of put me off initially. So yeah, imaging is still I think quite good. 45ish degrees, I was still able to perceive them, no problems in terms of imaging. But the soundstage depth is definitely an issue, even for me, which yeah. Now back to comparisons. Comparing these to the Blessing 2s, I think the Blessing 2s just beat them outright. I think the separation and data retrieval of the Blessing 2s are on another level. I think at this price point, I think the biggest winning point that the BGVP DM8s have is that they're overall a lot warmer and a lot softer presentation in terms of sound. I think if you appreciate that, I think you'll like these a lot more than the Blessing 2s. I can completely understand if you like the DM8s over the Blessing 2s. They're like quite opposites in terms of sound signature. The Blessing 2s are like a lot more aggressive than the DM8s. And the Blessing 2s upper mids are a lot more emphasized. The treble is a lot more a bit more detailed, also quite a bit more sharp than the DM8s. Base quantity, I think there's more in the DM8s, but the overall kick and punch and just rumble quality of the Blessing tools just make it feel like there is just, it feels like there's equal amounts, but the Blessing tools definitely have less bass. It's just that the quality of the bass in the Blessing tools is just like one step above the DM8s. I think it's a bit unfair to compare the DM8s to the Blessing tools in terms of sound. I just don't think that these are worth $350. I think these are like, I would compare these more towards the T-Audio Legacy 3s and 4s in terms of technical capability, which we'll talk about next. And lastly, the mid-range between these and the Blessing tools, I think the mid-range of the Blessing tools feel a little bit thinner, just ever so slightly thinner. But the detail retrieval and separation are again on just one step below the Blessing tools. So overall, against the Blessing tools, I think these are just like one knockdown in terms of technical performance, but they're overall a lot more easy to listen to. They're warmer, nicer, softer to listen to. Soundstage depth and imaging, I think the Blessing tools also just beat these outright. So yeah. Now if you compare these to something like the T-Audio Legacy 3s and 4s, I think if you took like the bass and mid-range of the Legacy 4s and you like mix them with the Legacy 3s, I think this is what you would get. Like if you took the treble of the Legacy 3s, combine them with the mid bass and the mids and the bass of the Legacy 4s, this is what you would get. And I think they compete more in that price range. Like I wouldn't spend $350 on these. Like $250, maybe $300, maybe yes. Like if you get these for like $50 ish off, I think I can do them justice. But at $350, the Blessing tools exist. So yeah, that's rather unfortunate. And if you like the E2000s or E3000s from Final Audio, I think this feels like an upgrade from them. And they are definitely an upgrade in terms of technicalities from those. So yeah. Now, overall, I think if these were just a little bit cheaper, if they're like $50 cheaper, I could see them being competitive at that price. But at the price that they're at, I just don't think they can compare to something like the Blessing tools. Which actually, in Indonesia right now, the Blessing tools are like quite a bit cheaper than the DM8s. So yeah. Now, like if you like this video, comment what you think, and yeah, subscribe if you want more content like this. See you guys next time.